Welcome to ScarJoes. I'm your host Ryan, and today is another reaction video. Sorry that the videos have been so in between, so much time in between and everything, and sorry that this particular video took me so long to actually get out to you guys. I've had a lot of things to say for a while when it comes to this. This is a follow-up to my previous video in regards to the statements made on Twitter and since Twitter by Aubrey Sitterson. Now, this, just like my other reaction videos, completely unedited. This is mistakes and all, so this is also going to be the last time I even really talk about this topic, unless something else blows up. But I just want to put this thing to rest because I think pretty much everything that could be said has been said. But I really wanted to get something out to you guys to let you know what my thoughts are since everything happened, since things have been said, and since actions and non-actions have happened and everything. And I'm hoping that the things I have to say are kind of how you guys are feeling as well when it comes to being a fan of G.I. Joe, a fan of the comics that are coming out from various licensed properties and everything else. Since I did that video, I have now been part of the group that is labeled as, homophobic, racist, sexist, extreme right-wing, transphobic, the list goes on and on. And it just makes me laugh because I don't think any of those things have ever been used to describe me by anyone that actually knows me. But of course, because I spoke out against what Aubrey Sitterson said, that's how I'm being labeled. That's how a lot of people are being labeled in the G.I. Joe community, in those that had problems with what he said. The funniest thing and the biggest problem I have with that is that my problem was with what he said about 9/11. When you look at the comments, as far as what he said, it had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing to do with gender. It had nothing to do with sex. It had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with anything other than he made a completely insensitive comment that insulted a lot of people. He made comments that basically said, my feelings mean more than yours, and if you're using 9/11 to get some type of sympathy, you basically suck. That's essentially what he said. Not word for word, not putting words in his mouth, but that's essentially what he said. And when people called him out on it, he said, F you. So I'm trying to understand how the things that he said had anything to do with politics, had anything to do with sex, had anything to do with transgender, or had anything to do with race. It had nothing to do with any of those things. But people that are supporting him have completely twisted it into that. In fact, one online website, Bleeding Cool, which a lot of comic fans do know about, actually put out an article. And I think initially the article was actually titled like extreme right-wing people were found, something along the lines of extreme right-wing people against Aubrey Sitterson. And it talked about how there was extremists out there that were using this as an opportunity to bash him, to get him off the book, to just use this as a reason to promote their political agendas and everything else, or their social agendas. That's not at all what happened. Now, mind you, you probably found one or two people, maybe 10 people, maybe 20 people. There's a lot of people out there that are extremists in that respect that did use this as an opportunity. And you bashed them for it. But then Aubrey was bashing people because some of them might be using 9/11 as an opportunity to reach out and get some sympathy for themselves. There's a lot of irony in that. I think it was completely inappropriate to put something out there because that is not fair and balanced, because when you look at it, I don't have a problem with Bleeding Cool putting that article out there and saying that they found some people that were using this for their own agenda. But then you should be viewing the opposite side, which is that there was extreme social justice people, and I say extreme social justice people because there's extremists on that side as well, that were using it as an opportunity to push their agenda. If you're going to put out an article like that, be fair and balanced. Show this side and that side, because they were both out there. Instead, what you did was you pushed your own agenda to say, hey, look, these are the people that are actually against what Aubrey Sitterson said. Shame on you for that. Absolutely shame on you for that. That is completely invalid. The majority of the community out there, the majority of the people that were buying the G.I. Joe book and that had a problem with what was being said are normal, everyday people that care about each other. I know this because, number one, I'm one of them, and I do care about the people around me. I don't have political agendas. I don't have anything against anybody of any race, or, you know, and I don't need to justify myself in that respect. You know, anyone out there that wants to get to know me, that does know me, will learn that about me. But if you're gonna push something out there and say that this wasn't people were using this, then you got to show the other side as well. So like I said, shame on you for putting that out there and turning it into something else. It just came across very sloppy. It came across very ugly. That wasn't news. That was pushing your own agenda to really paint all of the G.I. Joe fans in a very poor light. I've gone to JoeCon, I've gone to comic conventions where I've met a lot of G.I. Joe fans from doing the show, from doing the podcast. I've gotten to know a lot of G.I. Joe fans. I would say 99% of them are just normal, everyday people that really just want to read a good G.I. Joe comic. They want to read a good story. And that's been the problem with the book lately. If IDW is paying attention to this at all, it's that the problem we have with Aubrey Sitterson on the book is that it seems like he's pushing an agenda. Like he's pushing things because it's going to cause issues with the fans. And I will honestly say that the comment that he puts on the book of the crown jewel of the Hasbro universe, initially it probably could have been taken as self-promotion. You know, like this is gonna be the best book, kind of like what Marvel did back in the day. Like, this is the greatest superhero comic ever. This is the greatest magazine sold ever. The problem is, I don't think that's how it was meant. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think the idea behind putting that on the book was a slap in the face to the G.I. Joe fans. It's a slap in the face to the property. It was to say, yeah, this is going to be the crown jewel. Look at the crap I'm going to throw at you. Look at the things I'm going to do that's just intentionally done to piss you off. Because that's what he does. If you follow him at all, if you look at the things he comments, when he does something, he puts it out there saying, this is what I think is needed out there. It's an agenda. It is not, I want to tell a great story. I want to tell a great G.I. Joe story that the fans will enjoy. Now, are you going to please everyone when you try to do that? No. But you should always be keeping your fans in mind. When you do a licensed property, you should be paying attention to what the fans enjoy. What do they like? That doesn't mean you can't push the boundaries. That doesn't mean you can't try something a little different. But it does mean that you don't tell all of your fans F you when they don't like something that you did. Especially when a majority of them are not liking something that you did. You know, when you start looking at, well, this cover is making news, and this change of this character is making news, that's surface level bullshit. That's surface level stuff that becomes the story. The story is supposed to be the story. It should be the fact that this is the best G.I. Joe comic that's been written in a long time. Look at the stuff they're doing, the awesome things they're doing with the characters. The Joe fans are loving it. That's what the story should be. When you start looking at the cover and the surface level stuff, and you stop looking at the fact of trying to tell a good story and look at the content of the characters and the content of the story, it becomes completely pointless. And that's been the problem with some comics lately, is that people are pushing agendas instead of pushing good stories, instead of pushing good content. The content of character. I wonder where we've heard that before. Look at telling good stories. And here's the craziest thing about all of it. There are creators, some awesome creators out there that want to tell good stories. And they do a great job of it. When something like this comes out and something like this happens and people are outraged over it, those creators that actually have a problem with it are afraid to say anything about it. With my last video, I actually had creators that reached out to me that thanked me for saying what I said because they felt they couldn't because it would damage their career. That's sad, because the things that were said by Aubrey Sitterson were mean and like hateful statements that had no repercussions whatsoever. But if someone spoke out and said, well, I don't like what he said, well, then they're afraid that they might actually not get work or lose their job or something like that. That is so wrong. Why is he allowed to be outspoken about what he has to say, but the people that would speak against him have to be in fear of what they might say back? It should be no surprise that I was blocked by Aubrey Sitterson on Twitter. I believe I was blocked by him on Facebook. I will admit I blocked him on the group page on Facebook for Star Joes. The reason I did that is because I knew I was putting the video out. I didn't want him to lash out at the fans of the show. I didn't want him to be attacking people that were supporting what I had to say. I basically did it to protect my fan base. And it probably was the wrong move to make, but I just felt like if he wanted to come at me or say something to me or have a conversation with me, there's a unique idea, then I thought, you know what, I'm not blocking him from my Twitter, I'm not blocking him from Instagram, I'm not blocking him from my Facebook page. He could reach out to me and maybe we can have a conversation. I'm all for that. But I didn't want him attacking my fans. So I think what I'm going to do, we'll see what happens. I'll unblock him from the group page. I'm going to ask my fans out there to please not attack him, to please not go after him. But if he wants to watch this video and he wants to react to it and he wants to talk to me about it, I'm willing to have that open dialogue with him. But here's the thing at the end of the day when it comes to the comments that were made. You have to realize that they were insensitive. You have to realize that even though I think I understand why you made the comments you made, Aubrey, you have to realize that they were mean and spiteful, and when people pointed them out to you, you don't say, F you. You say, you know what? I looked at what I said. Yeah, that was kind of a jerky move on my part. Because that's what we do. Let's face it. Everyone out there, you know you've said insensitive things before. You know you've made comments before that pissed other people off. And if you don't admit to that, then you're probably in that boat that just says, well, everything I say is right and F you. So I have had friends that have actually said to me, you know, Ryan, that was kind of a really jerk move. That was a dick move on your part. You shouldn't have said that. And I'll think about what I said and I was like, you know, yeah, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool on my part. And I'll apologize to the person, or I'll apologize to the group of people, whatever the situation was. That's what Aubrey should have taken a step back and realized, is that he said something that really offended a lot of people, that really upset a lot of people. And it wasn't for political reasons, it wasn't for sexist reasons, it wasn't for racist reasons, it wasn't for any of those things that they want to paint in a spotlight now over. It was just an insensitive comment that he doubled down on. If he had come out and said, you know what, I'm getting a lot of flack for this, and I looked at what I said, and yeah, I was just in a place that, you know, it was bothering me, and that's why I put it out there. Sorry if it offended anyone. I wouldn't have had a problem. There wouldn't have been a previous video. But that's not what he did. Like I said, I've had friends that turned to me and said, "That Ryan, that wasn't a cool thing for you to say." And I was like, yeah, you know what, that wasn't a cool thing for me to say. But I'm human, I make mistakes, I apologize for it. That's not what Aubrey's friends did. Aubrey's friends decided to block me also. They also decided to say bad things and paint everyone as racist and paint everyone as political, right-wing extremists. I had the Mags, Visaggio, she, you know, blocked me also. I didn't even say anything to her. In fact, I'm looking forward to the comic that she's putting out with the Visionaries, and I'm interested to see what she does with it. I'm actually going to review it. So it just boggles my mind what people will support, even if they feel that what was said was wrong. You know, and I'm sorry, but you can't look at what he said and tell me that, oh, he was totally in the right. You can understand where he came from. You can understand maybe why he said it. I totally get why he said it. It was a very personal thing for him. It was a very personal thing that 9/11 was extremely personal for him. And I get that, but it was very personal for a lot of people. Maybe not to your level, but guess what? There was people that was way more personal for them than it was for you. And like I said in my previous video, if someone's using 9/11 to get a little bit of sympathy, maybe that's what they need in their life right then. It's not a bad thing. They're not trying to capitalize on it. They're not trying to gain money over it or anything like that. Of course, that would be wrong. But just because they're looking for a little bit of self-pity and things like that, that's just what they needed right then. Why bash them for that? You know, I'll give you another example of someone that supported what Aubrey said and why I have a problem when you go to the extremes. On either side, the extremes on either side are awful. There was also a writer, the Mary Sue, who did a whole article about and turned all of us, you know, that were against what Aubrey said into this, you know, painted us in this poor light. And then I was like, well, let me read some other stuff that she's written. And one of the other things was reading about the book Alters. It's a comic book written by Paul Jenkins from Aftershock Studios and publishing company. And they, the book it feels very X-Men-y. It has this X-Men feel to it and flavor to it and everything else. And it's very well written. The main character that we focus on is a transgender boy. He's going through, you know, he's going through that in his life, and he just doesn't know where he's at and everything. And it's very well told. The problem that Mary Sue had with it was that evidently it wasn't spotlighting a transgender person the way she thought a transgender person should be portrayed. But just because it's not the way you think it should be portrayed doesn't mean it wasn't being well told. Doesn't mean it wasn't putting a spotlight on somebody that goes through that. For all we know, Paul Jenkins knows a lot of transgender people, or maybe he talked with a lot of transgender people to find out, like, what do they go through emotionally? What are they dealing with? He probably knows quite a few that he pulled from what he knows. That's what a writer does. And instead of bashing him for it or bashing the book for it, you should be celebrating the book. It's a well-told book. It's a good comic. And the fact that they put a writer like Paul Jenkins on it to tell this story, wow, you actually have a well-known comic book writer telling a good story that spotlights a social issue that's out there, but does it by telling a good story. Again, I refer to it like the X-Men because the main focus isn't the fact that this person is going through a transgender situation. It's the fact that he's also dealing with powers, and the transgender part of it is part of his life that he's also having to deal with. It's kind of like Peter Parker having to deal with, I need to take care of my Aunt May, and I have to find a job, and I'm dealing with high school and everything else on top of having these superpowers. So it's dealing with real world, but it's also dealing with powers. But it's like I said, it's just a well-told book, and you're gonna bash it and say, well, he doesn't know how to capture it correctly. Doesn't know how to capture what we go through. All right, maybe he doesn't know how to capture what you went through, but he's capturing it pretty well. He's at least bringing a spotlight to that social issue. Like I was saying earlier, I don't have a problem with social justice situations. You know, especially when they're legitimate social justice situations. Like, it's horrible that anyone would have to deal with ridicule and problems just because they feel a certain way or have certain skin color or feel a certain way towards a certain gender or anything like that. It's horrible. But to go to the extreme, and when someone's trying to put a positive story out there and you're just going to bash it, it gets tiresome. It gets sickening. I'm just so tired of it. Now, there's a lot of you guys out there that have given up on IDW, and that's the last thing I wanted to touch on here. So I told you guys in my last video, I'm not buying Aubrey Sitterson's title. I'm just not doing it. I've stopped getting anything that he was writing at all. there's just a lot of hypocrisy in the things that he does and says, especially when you look at some of the other things he's worked on. He's worked on telling a story about the Ultimate Warrior, who was a total sexist, racist person, but you're going to tell a story about him. You're doing comics for WWE, which is run by a very conservative Republican, and but that's okay, evidently. But at the end of the day, I totally respect anyone out there that says, I'm just not buying IDW comics anymore because they didn't do anything. And they did put out a statement saying, we don't agree with what Aubrey said. It's not something we support. They didn't mention them by name. I understand that you have to choose your wording, unlike what I'm doing here. But they said, here's how we feel, and that actions would occur. There would be actions taken. We don't know what those actions were. From our eyes, no actions occurred. But for all we know, they had a talk with Aubrey. Although from looking at things that have been posted, looks like it didn't change anything. I never wanted Aubrey Sitterson taken off the title because of what he said. I feel like that's a bad precedent. I thought he should be off the title because he doesn't represent what the property is, but more so because the sales haven't been good. When sales on a comic aren't good, you either stop doing the comic or you get a different creative team. Sales on the comic for G.I. Joe have not been good, and I can't imagine that they're going to get any better with the new title coming out. So, like I said, I never wanted him to lose his job on that title because of what he said. I wanted him to lose it because the story hasn't been good. We need somebody else on there that truly understands this property and truly listens to the fans, like wants to do something for the fans. Aubrey Sitterson doesn't seem like he wants to do anything for the fans anymore, other than rile them up. So, IDW put that statement out. The comic for Scarlet Strike Force is still coming out, which does not surprise me at all. So, on one respect, they said, actions will be taken. But then there was a very vocal other side that came out and said, we support Aubrey Sitterson. If you cancel him or take him off the title, we're not going to buy your comics anymore, which is exactly what a lot of Joe fans said. So IDW was in a pickle. We have these people saying they're not going to buy it. We're going to have these people saying they're not going to buy it. So what do? Well, you already have the comic in production. And again, this is speculation. I don't know if this is what IDW actually decided to do, if this is why they decided to do it, but it's just the thing that makes sense to me. You have two groups saying they're not going to buy the comic. You already have the title in production. Put it out there. See who actually buys it. It's been stated that by Aubrey and by a lot of people that support him that the people that wanted him off the title weren't even people reading the comic. It's probably true for some. There's some Joe fans out there that weren't buying any of the IDW continuity because it's just not what they wanted. But the people that were buying your title were Joe fans for the most part. Good majority of them were Joe fans for the most part. Die-hard Joe fans. So I don't want to go out there and say that the people that are supporting what Aubrey said and everything and said they weren't going to buy the comic aren't people buying the title. Maybe they are. I just don't see it as being a large majority, and maybe they'll buy the title for the first couple issues to support him, and then we're going to see the title go down. I just don't see this selling well. If it does, hey, great, go for it. Evidently, I'm completely wrong then. But I just don't see it selling well. So that's what I think IDW is doing. Now, I will say also, like I said, I had creators from comics that reached out to me that said, thank you for what you said. Unfortunately, I can't say it, but I can still support you. I'm not looking to punish other creators at IDW. I'm not looking to punish IDW. I like a lot of the creative teams that are out there at IDW. I like what they're doing. I'm not looking to punish another creator because of what one creator said. I don't want to buy his titles, but I do want to support the other creators because I think they're doing good work and I want to support what they're doing. I don't have an issue with what IDW did. Me personally, I don't have an issue with what IDW did because they're getting flack from both sides, and I have to look at it from a business perspective as far as like, well, what, they're caught between a rock and a hard place, so they're just going to see what happens and let the cards fall where they may. So, but like I said, I support and understand those of you out there that said, I'm not buying any IDW titles until this whole issue is resolved. I totally get that. And hey, kudos for you for doing that. I am going to go back to reviewing comics, and some of them are going to be IDW. I'm going to be covering First Strike. I'm going to get caught up on doing reviews for that. I'm not going to cover the First Strike issues covered by Aubrey unless something changes, unless he comes out and says something, or to say, yeah, what I said was insensitive, it was not cool of me, or he wants to have a conversation or something like that. Again, I'm willing to have that conversation. So I guess that's all I really have to say. Again, it's just how I'm feeling about things, but like I said, I'm not out there to punish other creators. I'm not out there to to hurt IDW, but I want the message out there that this is not okay. It's not okay to do this. So I'm not buying that title because it's not okay. But I'm going to read the other titles. I'm going to report on them. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I totally support all of you guys out there that are done with IDW altogether, and waiting to see what they do, see what they say. Right now, we're hearing crickets. We're not hearing anything from you, IDW. I don't know if this will get out to you guys or not, but you need to come out with something saying maybe at least why you either didn't do anything or what's occurring. Because the Joe fans out there, we kind of deserve it at this point. Things are being done to a property that we love that we don't appreciate. It's not because we're sexist or racist or any of the other ists that you want to put out there. We just don't like what's going on. We want a awesome elite strike force team out there that is fighting the good fight, that is battling, Cobra is, and if you're going to do the Hasbro universe, they're fighting against, the Cybertronians that are on the bad side. We want good and bad. You can throw in some gray in there, some gray issues and everything else, but it's meant to be like this elite strike force of like the best of the best, and you're not focused on even putting the best of the best out there for the fans. So I'm sure there was a lot more I wanted to say. Some of it escapes me, but I do thank you guys for the support out there. I really appreciate how many people watched the video I had before. I hope you guys will stick around for some of the other videos that I'm going to be doing. It's not going to be all IDW titles, but there's going to be some in there. I'm looking forward to covering some of the other 80s properties that have comics out there. I want to have the conversation with you guys, so check us out on the Facebook group, check us out on Instagram. All of it's in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this video. Hopefully you don't feel like I've done a 180 from what I was saying before, because I really haven't. This is exactly how I feel about it. I feel like it was completely insensitive what was said. I feel like a lot of us Joe fans are being painted in a very poor light, and I think that IDW needs to pay attention to that. And I think they need to realize that there's a lot of vocal places out there, such as those that are supporting Aubrey and those like Bleeding Cool and things like that, that are just finding those extremists to say, well, this is what the Joe fans are like. It's not at all. And if you notice, I didn't say, well, here's all the people supporting Aubrey Sitterson are these extremists. We pointed out some specific ones. I think some of them just feel like maybe some of us are overreacting and things like that. I get that, but I don't think we are. I think it's just one of those things like you're taking something we love and you're finding every reason to make us upset about it. and you feel like it's shaking things up, shaking the system up. No, it's a licensed property that all of us enjoyed growing up with, and we just want to see some awesome stories told with it, and that's not what we're getting. The things that are making the headlines aren't the awesome stories. So again, thank you very much for the support. I'm sorry this went pretty long, but hopefully you guys made it all the way to the end, and let me know what you have to say about this whole thing. Put it in the comments below, and I really appreciate it. And as always, I completely forgot the end tagline. But remember, the force will be with you, because knowing us is half the battle. Take care, everyone.